Welcome everybody on behalf of Medford Friends Meeting. I'm really glad to see you here. Medford Meetings Climate Change Group hosts programs like this because we're really trying to build a community of empowered people who care about the earth, give them resources and give them an opportunity to share their resources with one another. And we're specifically talking about kids today because our children already know that we're in the midst of climate crisis. They don't need us to tell them that. What they need is some informed and prepared adults who can have a conversation with them about what that means to them and help support them in finding solutions that they can be a part of. So I am really happy to have Bob Vest with us today to lead this discussion on planting seeds of hope, talking to kids about climate change. Bob has lived in Medford Lakes for 15 years. He's been teaching biology and environmental sciences since 1999, although he doesn't look old enough for that. And now he's teaching at George School, which is a Quaker school in Pennsylvania, for those of you who are not familiar with it, where he also sits on the school's environmental oversight committee and holds the Laux Distinguished Chair. There's more I could say, but for the sake of getting right to the program, I'm going to stop there. If you get a chance to talk to Bob afterwards, you could ask him about Workaway, Africa, all sorts of interesting stories he could tell you. So thank you all for coming, and Bob, all yours.
Okay, well, thank you so much for inviting me to speak at your meeting. What I would say is it's interesting and informative. This is a really important topic. I feel that when we talk about climate change, with kids, it's really important not to frame it in a way that is all doom and gloom. Because they're kids and they need to have hope. When there's no hope, there's apathy. When there's apathy, there's despair, and people are like, well, if there's nothing I can do about it, why should I try to do anything about it? So when thinking about climate change, when thinking about talking to children and adults, we do need to look at it not in a positive light, because climate change is not positive, but as if, it can be solved. And I truly think that it can. So why do we want to talk about climate change with kids? It's important to be open and honest with children. They know more than we knew at their age. Like, they are super plugged in. They are aware of the world, for better or worse. So pretending these things aren't happening isn't helpful. It's counter, it's counter to what we're trying to do. This is a picture of some of my students at a recent climate change march in Philadelphia. Just so you know, a little background here. We filled up 3 buses. We went to City Hall. We marched around City Hall. It was really cool. The kids made all of these signs. There's a couple more pictures. But they felt, when we took our kids there, they felt engaged. They felt like they were doing something, that their voices were being heard, and that they were making a change. So why do we want to do this? We want to shape their understanding. We want to, again, give them the correct information. What these kids today are finding on TikTok, on Instagram, on social media in general, is not always correct information. More often than not, it's not correct information. It's wrong, and they need to have like the real scientific and facts and have an understanding. So we, as the adults, it's our responsibility to make sure they're getting good information. So it's a really important reason to have this discussion, because I promise you, they are hearing about these things, but they're hearing about them from other sources. So we want to make sure that we are providing, appropriate, accurate information. We want to talk to the kids so we can empower them. These kids need to feel like they have a voice, that they have a reason to, to be engaged in these topics. Understanding these issues, allows them to start to come up with solutions. And we don't want to kind of push down their ideas. We don't want to, dismiss, the voices of this younger generation, because they have really good ideas. I think often as adults, we're like, oh, you're just a kid. You don't know. I've lived through these things. Your voice isn't quite as important, but it is. Like these kids, I can tell you, my students today are just very wise. They're very wise in their young age. They have good ideas. So we want to be able to, give them a place to speak. We want to amplify their voices, and we want to talk to them. And this is really important to help reduce their anxiety. I don't know how much you all spend with kids, but I spend a lot of time with kids. I'm a high school teacher, and these kids today are just riddled with anxiety. They feel that the world is coming to an end. They feel that everything they're hearing is doom and gloom, and it's wearing them down. It is wearing them down. I don't remember being this anxious at age when I was their age. It's tough. So by reducing, by giving them good information, by allowing them a voice, by allowing them to be engaged, and cultivating this hope, it does reduce their anxiety. When students come into my class and we start talking about climate change, I'm not just like bombarding them with all the bad stuff. It's always, okay, here's the problem, but here's the solution, or here are the people that are making the positive changes in the world. So what do we want to do? What are these key principles when we do want to have these conversations? And I have these 4 things up here that I think are really important. Like, we want to start with curiosity. Like, these kids, they're curious. If they're this tall, if they're this tall, it doesn't matter. Children are curious. They have really good questions. They want to know. If we start with fear, we're like, man, these things are really bad. The world is falling apart. It kind of pulls them back into a shell. They become less engaged. So allow this conversation to start as like a shared conversation, an exploration onto these or about these problems, these really big problems. But like, let's have this conversation together. What do you like when you speak to the kids? Like, ask them what they're thinking, what they're feeling, how they would make these changes, and kind of go at it together. You don't want a hierarchy here. You want as the adult and as the child, to kind of go into this together. Focus on solutions, not just problems. This is like a tenet of how I teach science and environmental science in particular. There's plenty of problems. Okay, I could list out 1,000 problems, but what are the solutions? How can we actually fix these things? And they don't need to be giant solutions. A lot of times kids get overwhelmed because they think, oh, this is too big of a problem. The world is a big place. Climate change is a big thing. How can I make a change? Well, you don't need to change the world. You just need to change your world. You just need to change that little part that you are, part of. You can plant a garden. You can, turn off the lights. You can stop eating red meat, which we'll talk about later on. So everybody can make these changes. So exposing kids, again, from little to big, to those who have done. Kids like to see, evidence that a thing can be done. Like, if we say it can be done, they're like, sure mom, sure dad, sure teacher, sure grandma, sure grandpa, whatever. But when you show them, like, well, look, here's this kid from, wherever that did this thing, and look at the change that arose. And these are things that we can find that they exist. Make it age appropriate. This is important, right? There's like, I teach high school. I wouldn't talk to my niece and nephew about climate change or loss of biodiversity at the same level as you know, with my niece and nephew as I would with my high school kids. So it's important to kind of keep things, you know, at the right level. You don't want to scare little kids. Like, does a 5-year-old really even need to know what climate change is? Like, and that's a question to kind of think about. Like, when do you actually introduce these ideas? Actively listen and validate their feelings. Kids want to feel validated. They want to feel like they matter, like their opinions, like what they're saying means something, that it has value, and that you are listening to them and maybe not agreeing with them, but hearing them, hearing their voices. And this can be a struggle for adults sometimes. I struggle with it myself with my own kids sometimes. But it is really, really important, especially when talking about these really big issues like, again, climate change. So, some things, like, kind of broke this down into different groups. Like, when you're looking at preschoolers, like little kids, like 3 to 5, do you really... I would not recommend like bringing up destabilizing climate change, you know, the melting of the glaciers, you know, these really scary things, because that's not, they're not going to be able to really understand it. It's hard for them to conceptualize it. But you would rather talk about what weather is, what climate is. Give the basic information. And better yet, like, not just like give information. Little kids don't want to hear you talking about these things. Take them outside. Take them to these places to, you know, kind of explore, get their hands dirty. I'm a very, like, I very seldom actually give lectures to my students. So this is a little different for me. I'm normally doing activities with my kids. That really gets kids to understand. We want our kids at a youngest age possible to start to appreciate nature, to appreciate the land in which they live. And this is something that kids are starting to pull away from now. Like, there are less kids going outside today as there were when you all were growing up, when I was growing up. It's just a sad fact of what's been happening. Kids don't go outside. Their parents aren't taking them outside. There's been a disconnect between humanity and nature, and it's sad and unfortunate, because if there isn't that connection, there's not going to be that like feeling of ownership of nature and this desire to protect it and to take care of it. So at the youngest age possible, outside, get your hands dirty, you know, dig up some worms, eat dirt. It's okay. It's all right. If anybody has ever been to Medford Lakes, our kids in Medford Lakes are like feral animals. So, but other places aren't like that, unfortunately. When they get a little bit older, like into elementary school, you know, you can start adding more information. And some of the schools might give some of this information and some may not. Like, I would not, maybe this is controversial, I would not rely on your elementary school teachers to be providing the highest level science education. And it's not even their fault. They're just not trained in this you know, in this topic, not really. So you want to make sure that they are understanding and starting to learn some basic science. It's, you know, again, simple causes and effects. Like, if this happens, you know, this other thing will happen. So you want to start really thinking about like critical thinking, really asking questions. At this age, this elementary school, this is when so many questions are going to start to arise. Like, that age group, those 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds, 11-year-olds, etc. I mean, they're asking 1,000 questions. And also, this is the time when they start getting just like inundated with information. I don't know how young kids are getting phones nowadays. I mean, but like little kids are getting phones, and once they have that phone, they are plugged into the world. So they're getting that information. So you really do want to start providing them accurate information, asking those questions. Middle schoolers, okay, they should start, be getting a little bit more information. This is when you can really start to bring in like some activism, some advocacy, like getting kids to, go to a climate march. And of course you can do that at any age, but like these middle school kids, this is really when they start to feel their voices. They want to really be heard. They're becoming independent of the adults, or at least they're trying to. So they're having these thoughts and they're having these ideas. And, 12-year-olds, 14-year-olds, they can start to really think and really start to advocate for their ideas, and, they're going to want to do things. High school kids, again, this is when they're really kind of starting to get into things. And this is where, the age group that I teach, like these are kids that are really looking at like social justice, environmental activism. They really, really do want to go out and make a change. Well, some kids do. And all kids can be encouraged to do this. So just kind of thinking about the age group that you're working with, or that you're talking with, or like your grandkids or kids, however old they are, you kind of have to look at, where they are and meet them, at their level. That's just really important. So that's my daughter. We're hiking the Appalachian Trail in Georgia. Very dramatic. She's looking out there. I have her up there because she does suffer from anxiety, and she does have, she gets upset about what's happening in the world. She's now in high school. She actually does go to George School. I think she was maybe 11 or 12 in this photo. So these kids are really, like I said earlier, they are feeling anxious. They are feeling worried. They are feeling like burdened. Like there is a weight on their shoulders that it's like devastating, and it's really like upsetting and sad to me as an educator and as a parent, because they feel like there's nothing they can do about it, and they didn't cause this problem. Like they didn't cause this problem. And they're like, well, why isn't anybody doing anything about this? Why are we going to be the ones left to deal with what you all have done? Us all, all of us have done. And it's like sitting on their shoulders, like, crushing them. So like, how do we deal with this? Acknowledge their feelings. Like say, yes, I hear you. I hear what you are saying. I'm sorry for these feelings. I'm sorry for what our generations have done. And, let them know it's normal. It's normal to be scared of scary things. Like these are scary things. And if they are coming to you from a place of fear, acknowledge that, accept it, let them know that it's okay. But don't stop there. Okay, the fear is there. We have to kind of get past that fear and come to this next part. Like provide the hope. Like I was saying earlier, like without hope, there will be no change. Like Jane Goodall said something along those lines. She wrote a really good book. I have it in here. I'll show it to you in a minute. But without having that hope, the kids they'll just go back on their phones. They'll just put on Netflix. They're like, well, you guys screwed up this world. There's no hope. I'm going to scroll on TikTok. and look at other things. So we do have to really say, okay, there is a problem, but there have been problems in the past that we have overcome as a species, as a society, and give them this agency that they can be the change makers. It only takes one person to change the world for good, and it could be that child. I'm not a big advocate of just talking. Like, people can talk constantly, everyone's always talking, but we need actions and allow them to have some actionable things that they can actually do to start to make change and be a model of action as well. Again, talk is great, like this talk is lovely, but like what is the action? What is the end result? How can we make an actual change by doing a thing to make it better? And kids want to do that. From little kids to big kids, they all want to do a thing to make a change. And I like collective action. It's great to do things on your own, but as a group, you're so much more powerful. And kids realize that, when they're working together, getting in a group, it could be, a scout group, just some friend group or whatever, to make some big changes. Resilience and coping skills. So, again, with all of this anxiety, all of this pressure on these kids, and like with just what has been happening recently with COVID, again, was a huge pressure on these kids. And, I've been incredibly impressed with the resilience of youth. Like, I think we give kids a hard time. We think that, the world, they're not tough anymore. These kids are like, just on their phones all the time. They're not thinking. These kids today are really amazing. They are incredibly resilient. They are back at school. They are working hard. They see the world as it is, and they are trying to make, changes. So let's look at, their resilience. So just constant support for the kids. Does anybody have any questions right now? I've been talking a lot at the moment. Yes.
Not a question so much, but when you're talking about resilience and coping skills, it just occurred to me that one of the best things we can do is model our own coping skills, because it's not like they're the only ones that are anxious. And when you're talking about their feelings, part of validating those feelings is to say, yeah, I have them too, and here's how I deal with them. I do mindfulness meditation, or first thing in the morning I go outside, and that just sort of helps me get through the rest of the day, whatever it is.
Absolutely. They're really good points. Yes. Like, if it's easy to say, oh, you should cope on, you should have these coping skills. But if you are kind of freaking out in the corner, and the kids are going to see, like, the kids pick up on everything that we do, everything we say, every emotion. Like, they know you're upset before you know you're upset. Like, they're seeing this. So you're right. Like, modeling these coping skills, be like, all right, I see that this is a problem. I know that this is a problem. I'm not going to freak out too much over it, and I'm going to do something about it. Being that model as the adult, as the teacher, as whatever you happen to be in that child's life, is very, very important. Like, don't say one thing and then do another. Yes.
Years and years ago, when this sort of first started, there were two things that we had kids do. One was sort trash, and we taught them that in school, and they took it home. The recycle, and the other thing was tree hugging, and we planted trees. Can you name things? We all have bags now when we go to the store. That happened overnight. Can you name some things? Can we tell kids that they should only be bringing their lunches to school in this container? Can we tell them?
There's a lot of things like you know, the number one thing, the easiest thing, well, not everybody would agree this is the easiest thing, but the easiest thing that anybody can do to mitigate your CO2 burden on the earth is to not eat cattle, to not eat beef. Beef is devastating for climate change. Like the amount of resources, the amount of CO2 that is released, and methane and water vapor and all of these other greenhouse gases that are released through the production of industrialized, cattle production is immense. It is hands down the easiest thing and most effective thing to do. It is to eat less meat. Now, that might be hard, but if you want to do something, I mean, that's pretty, besides buying electric cars and, getting off the grid and doing all of these other things, that is the thing. That is the thing. Yes.
I couldn't agree with you more, and it reminds me of something somebody told me a couple of years ago, which is, if you want to work on climate change with kids, you have to make it fun. Well, so, how do you make not eating meat fun? You make black bean brownies, maybe. I don't know. But you have to think about ways that make it a challenge.
Yeah.
Learn to cook with tofu. Tofu's your friend. I don't know. Just
Avocado chocolate pudding.
yeah. There you go.
Heard of that?
It's delicious.
I love avocado.
Oh my gosh.
But you're right. Like kids, especially little kids, it has to almost be a game. Not that climate change was a game. It is a serious thing, but it does have to be like something like that. Planting a native garden is just one of the best things you can do. But the butterflies, you also have to be careful about the butterfly garden, because some people, and this is just a little side note here, are actually planting the wrong milkweed. Yeah. They plant the milkweed from like Central America, which lives too long and it keeps the monarchs here too long, and they freeze and die. So I know, really sad story. But you have to plant the native plants. But just any garden, really, like any, vegetable garden, fruit garden, like something like that. That goes a long way. And kids are now, they're getting their hands dirty. They're outside. They are seeing, the fruits of their labor. No one? I said fruits. Okay. So like that connects them to their place. So something like that is something really, really good. And it kind of comes to this, right? So like fostering this hope, celebrate the kids' small wins, right? So if they do plant a garden and, they grew 7 string beans, don't be like, oh man, you only had 7 string beans. Be like, that's awesome. You had 7 string beans. And now we didn't have to go to work, or not work. We didn't have to go to the grocery store. We didn't have to utilize, the gas to get to the store. We didn't have to do X, Y, Z. Like we made this right here. Or if they, even something as simple as they remember to recycle their aluminum can. Great. Like start celebrating these small wins, because the small wins start to build up, and it again, I use this word a lot, it empowers them. It gives them this agency, like, all right, look, I made this change. The other really simple thing to do, and this might sound like, I don't know, just really like easy, is turn off lights. Like make that a game. All right, kids, let's make sure we have all the lights off. I mean, even like when things are plugged in, there's something called vampire energy. It's still sucking energy out of the walls, even if the appliance isn't turned on. And that is utilizing, electricity. It's using fossil fuels. It's giving off carbon dioxide. So kind of just saying good job for all the little things. And then again, these things get bigger and bigger. Connecting with nature for me is hands down the best way to get kids to care about climate change, loss of biodiversity, just making the world a better place. Go outside. Just go outside, take the kids outside and let them free. Like, don't make it a chore. Like, so much of like what kids are going through today, it's like the only time they're outside is to go to their athletic events. They have, soccer from 6:30 to 8, and it's this organized thing and I love soccer, I love sports, I support all of that. But they need to have unorganized, free time outside to jump in puddles, to get their hands dirty, to catch bugs, to be free in nature. And it just doesn't happen today. Again, a little side note. I just got back from East Africa. I was in Tanzania for like 2.5 weeks. I've been home for about a week. I had taken 17 George School students on essentially an academic field experience to Tanzania. A lot of these kids that I took, they were terrified of bugs. I mean, like knocking on my tent at like 3 a.m. in the morning, packed. Like, these 2 girls came to my tent, packed, backpacks on, things packed, because there were bugs in their place, and they were like, "We have to go home. This is unacceptable." I'm like, we're like really far away right now. Like, we are like literally in the bush. There are lions around here. We're not going anywhere. But like, there was this like huge disconnect of their lives and nature. Even though I took them all the way across the world to like a very natural setting, like they hadn't quite gotten to that point where, I mean, they were still terrified. I mean, I'm talking terrified of tiny little bugs. So getting these kids outside and having them just exposed to, to the wonder. One of the things I really recommend is like having them write things down, make them observe, make them have a little journal, and start asking questions. So what did you notice when we were outside today? And as you take them outside a lot and you're asking them those questions, maybe they start to see some changes. Maybe they start to see some things that they shouldn't be seeing or that concerns them. There's less, the lakes in Medford Lakes aren't freezing as often as they used to. Why is that happening? There's not as many insects as there once were. So they start to formulate and see these changes, throughout their lives. And again, it connects them more to what they're doing. So engaging families in sustainable practices and community initiatives. Lead by example, and we said that earlier. You can't just talk. Okay, you can't just talk. You have to do. You have to be the one doing the things. And again, it doesn't have to be huge. It can be small, but I mean, a whole bunch of small changes, a whole bunch of small actions, that turns into a big change. And showing these kids that if you can do it, if I can do it, well, they can do it as well. So just like doing basic things, like reducing energy consumptions. Again, the meat, just don't be so wasteful. And as an American, it is hard not to be wasteful. Our entire society is built to be disposable and to waste things. So it does take thought. And I'm not saying I'm great at it, because I'm not. It's something that I have to work on. But it is something that we can do and to think about. Think about eco-friendly products. Like, is this peanut butter? Does it contain palm oil that is coming from Indonesia that, they just cut down an entire rainforest and killed all the orangutans so we get a palm oil? Like, does that peanut butter have it? And it's just sometimes all you have to do is this. Oh, it does. And you put it down and you get the one that does it. And start showing the kids, this. And again, it's just these small changes. Somebody else said this earlier too. Make it fun and engaging. If things aren't fun, if they're not engaging, kids aren't going to be interested. And their attention spans, unfortunately, are shrinking. And I'm not a anti smartphone person or anti-technology person. I'm the opposite. But their attentions are, they are getting shorter, and it does have to do with the fact that they have so much information kind of thrown at them all the time. And if they don't like the information, they can just swipe it away. Oh, I don't like that. It's gone. Oh, look at this. I'm seeing funny little cats dancing. That's better. And who doesn't like funny little cats dancing? But, that does happen. It's just kind of moving. So, you do have to put some effort into this and think about, well, how can I make this engaging? And I got the planting the garden thing. It does work. I've seen it with students, because they are seeing, they're seeing, that they can do a thing. My daughter is in a really cool class at George School. I have to remember the name. It's Applied Technology in Botany. Yeah. So it's hydroponics. So they are building these really cool hydroponic, stacked kind of farms, planting stuff in them, and they're basically these little self-sufficient things. They're they're laser printing everything out and building them. So we have a bio teacher and we have a technology teacher kind of working together to make these really cool things. So it's engaging, and believe it or not, it's easy. I mean, it's easy enough, I should say. And I love this class. It's one of my favorite classes, and she loved it as well. And so that's one of these, just an example of an engaging, fun kind of thing you can do. Connect with other families. It's really helpful to find like-minded people who are also interested in all of these things. I think you're all here because you are like-minded and you do care about the planet. You're interested in this. You don't know I don't know you don't know everything. We can all learn from each other. So when you're talking to these other people, what did you do with your kids? How did they react to this? It just kind of builds that community. And once you have that community, you can really start to move forward. Yes, please.
That building community, I think, is really important also for the kids. They need to have that community to know they're not alone. And if you look around the room, I put up 16 different climate specialists or experts say about the one thing we can all do, and it's not do it alone.
Exactly. Because when you're alone, you're alone, and that becomes depressing, and you're like, well, I can't do this alone. But if somebody else is like, well, I'll help you, and then you're like, oh, all right, it just builds it up, and then there's 50 people doing it. Like I said, we had 3 full buses that we took to Philadelphia to fill that, for the climate march. The group, we have a climate action, not team, but a club at school, and they recently went to where did they go? They went to one of the big investment houses to start and protest it in front of them.
Maybe Vanguard?
No, it's someplace.
The Providence.
Could have been Vanguard. I'd have to look at. I can't remember. I was unable to go. But then there was some other Quakers came together. It was a couple of different things. But yeah, they wanted them to, not invest in the fossil fuels. So again, it wasn't one kid. It was 50 kids plus the other organizations that came as well. So it was really cool. Yes.
You live in Medford Lakes.
I do.
Is there a network of families you know of in Medford Lakes, or?
My friends. But they're tired of listening to me. Yeah, I'm always talking. But yeah, I mean.
Or in the elementary schools here, do you see a lot of work?
No. I don't see a lot of work in the elementary schools and middle schools. And I can't speak for Medford, but I can only speak on Medford Lakes.
New Jersey has the new mandates quite clearly. And when I looked at local Quaker elementary schools, they had a lot of things they were doing. Some had beehives, a lot of them had vegetable gardens. They started things.
Yeah, but they can definitely be started. But
now, I know there's gardens at the younger school in Medford Lakes.
That's like an ongoing problem because they put in these gardens and then they never maintain them.
Well, that takes a village to maintain, and it takes every year the kids get to another grade. It takes us too.
I agree.
I'd like to start on the salt that they put down. For 5 days, my dog and I could not leave the yard. He almost died the first year.
My recommendation always is to go to township borough meetings, colony meetings, all the meetings, and stand up and voice your thing. Go to the the Board of Education meetings. I've had to go several times to talk about LGBTQ rights that were not being withheld. We were having a lot of issues in Medford Lakes with some issues that I had to go, but not me, but like a group of people are discussing. So if you don't voice it, if you don't this is great, but we're all kind of like-minded here, I think, more or less. You need to go talk to the people who are not like-minded, and you need to challenge them, not in an angry way, but be like, hey, well, why aren't we doing this? We can do this, and not just say why aren't we doing this, and you should be doing this, but why are we doing this? This school is doing it, and this is how they're doing it, and I think we could probably do it here, and I'm willing to take it on with some of my friends to make this thing happen. That moves things a lot faster. Young lady in the back.
Medford Lakes has recently created the Humans for Humans organization, which is about, because it's not a very diverse community in Medford Lakes, so it's about trying to make the children more aware of diversity in the world and why it should be appreciated and things like that. And this would probably be a good topic for them because they like to do regular lectures on current events and issues.
It's a little plug for Humans for Humans. It's our friends group and our group. Yes.
I'm wondering, so you're a high school teacher and you teach this.
I do.
One of the things that I'm really curious about is, have you or do you know of some schools that do field trips to recycling plants or field trips to water, I don't know what they call them, refineries?
Sure.
Just because that sort of starts the, nobody thinks about, well, how do we have clean water? And so sort of beginning to ask those questions can, I think...
So those trips, I'll tell you right now, those were, the people at those organizations really like it when people want to talk about trash or talk about recycling or talk about water. I've taken students to the water treatment plant in Camden, on a couple of different occasions. At George School, we're now using this new recycling company. I'm trying to remember their names. Well, I can't remember their names, but they are recycling everything. And not the fake recycling that a lot of what we're recycling around here is going right in the trash. Minus your aluminum cans, almost everything else is going in the trash. Nobody wants it. This one over in Pennsylvania, they are finding ways to turn everything into something that is usable. And it's really amazing. And we just took a bunch of students there to see it. And they've come to us. It's really, really cool what they're doing. So yes, schools can certainly do it, but at a school, what you need a teacher. You need a teacher who is really into this. That is really you need that environmental advocate at the school, because if you don't have that, it's not going to happen. So you need to kind of find that person who wants to do these things and kind of become their ally. Say, oh, I'll support this. I'll come to the board meeting and ask for money to be allocated, for this program. And because if you don't, the superintendents, the principals, they're worried about other things often. So, but for sure, yes.
So New Jersey's the one state in the country that mandates K through 12 climate change curriculum. And they've provided it to all the schools. And you're right, if there's not a teacher there who really cares about it, it may not be done other than just the minimum that's required. But even that means your kids are learning something. And you talked before about when you introduce things, at what age do you tell them what? Well, maybe you just ask them what they've learned at school and then go from there. It'd be interesting. But so do we need to hold our schools accountable for doing what they're already?
Well, yeah, you absolutely do need to, because you cannot, like, again, I'm an educator. I've taught in the public schools for the majority of my teaching career. Just because it's in the curriculum, just because it's mandated, it doesn't mean that it's going to be taught at the level that it should be taught. And don't assume that those that are teaching your children that they even believe in climate change. And that is devastating for me to say, and it hurts me. But there are plenty of your kids and grandkids teachers who they don't believe in climate change. They don't believe in science, not really. So that is why it's important to ask.
Yeah, so part of that conversation is we have to really become politically astute, because every election we're electing people on the school board, and we have to know where they're coming from. And there's quite a large movement around the country of exactly denying these things that we care about. So we have to become very aware, and it's really hard to find out who these people are that are running for school board.
It is. At the small, again, these are things that we're dealing with in our little town. But,
So I'm not a conspiracy person, but there's a movement, let's say.
there is a movement. They will freely admit what they're trying to do.
That's one thing. The other thing, you've been teaching for a long time, right?
24 years.
Okay, so a lot in high school mostly?
Yeah.
So you've had a lot of kids come through your classes. Have you followed up with them to see if have they become different than the, despairing, uninterested 30 and 40
Every
year olds
one
out
of
there?
my students has become, they're almost a Nobel Prize winner. They're all geniuses. Everyone went to MIT or Harvard.
All right.
Now, I've had a lot of kids go into the sciences, and in particular, I have a lot of students who did go into environmental science and are working in the field. I don't know if I'll take complete credit for that, but my job as an educator is not just to disseminate facts and figures. That's in a book. That's easy. You don't even need me. You can YouTube it. But it is to kind of inspire kids to want to do this and to realize, this is even more important, that they can do it. You can be a scientist. You can be a doctor. It doesn't matter if you have C's and B's in high school. Who cares? Any of you remember your high school grades? Does anybody ever ask you what grades you got in high school? No one cares. And these kids, when they are inspired and they see that, I can be a scientist because Bob's telling me I can. All right, I'll give that a try. And yeah, they go into science, which is awesome.
Our people in this room, I guess we're kind of what we would call kids now, are probably 30 and 40 years old or more. I don't know. But maybe we're talking about our grandkids. But I've been, running into a lot of 30, 40-year-olds that are just giving up. They're just totally given up on having a future.
Well, that's sad. The younger ones aren't. So the 30-year-olds, it's harder to help them. And it's actually if they have given up, they've given up on this younger generation. So I would just bypass them. All right, because there is a future. If I didn't think there was a future, why would I waste my time here? Why would I waste my time teaching? And it's sad to hear that. And I know that particular generation does feel defeated, but their defeat doesn't mean that this younger generation has to follow in that path. And they don't want to follow that path. They're a 30-year-old, 35-year-old to a 15, 16-year-old might as well be, 1,000. Yeah, exactly. Might as well be 60. Like, they're like, whatever, dude, whatever, boomer, Like, what? The person's 35, but they're like, I don't even care about that. Like, they don't care about those people. They're worried about them, their generation. And they do have, they do have a hope. So what are some things, like, I'll just skip that one, boy. But these are just some things that I like. Yes.
One thing that is optimistic for children being educated on climate change, the Girl Scouts do a lot of programs on climate change, and I know specifically they do. One of their journeys is about water, and like it goes very much into like wastewater and what gets into the water, and that's like a whole year, maybe like 4th grade or something. So that's good. I mean, at least community organizations are picking up a little bit.
Sure. There's a couple books. These are just some like resources like that I like. There's an author, and I don't know if I have the interwebs in here, so I don't know if I can click on anything. There's an author called Richard Louv. He wrote a book called The Last Child in the Woods. You may have heard of this. It came out a while ago, but he kind of coined this term, nature deficit disorder. And he attributes a lot of kids' anxieties and issues in general with this disconnect of nature. It's a really interesting book. I highly recommend it. He's written several other books as well, kind of related to like working with wildlife and things like that. I like him. I think he's very inspirational. So Jane Goodall has a book out, and again, I should have clicked on the internet here. It's called The Book of Hope. Again, I highly recommend it. Jane Goodall she's hopeful. She's in her 90s, or I think she's 90 now. She might be 89. And she isn't like giving up. Like, she sees the world as it is, but also how it can. And she's seen how it was, how it is, and she still has like real hope, not like fake hope. And like, she's inspiring like all of these kids to make changes. There's a couple apps I like. There's this one called Seek. It's iNaturalist. What's really cool about this app, it's on my phone, I can show it to you afterwards, is that it helps you, well, it doesn't help you, it identifies flora and fauna. So you hold it up to a leaf and it identifies it for you. You can say that it's invasive, that it's native, that it's ornamental, or you can look at some insect. You can kind of just walk around. And for kids, like I use it with my students all the time, because again, we're always outside. We're doing projects where kids have to identify, different plants or different animals, different macroinvertebrates, etc. And this app helps them identify it. And it's fun. And especially for kids, you can be like, all right, we're going to go outside today and identify, like who can identify the most insects today, like with some of the kids. That can be really fun. The other one I like a lot is Merlin. If you like birds, Merlin is great because you can like just hold it up and it'll hear the bird calls. That's really cool. So again, really, really cool. And both of them, like they're learning. So the more data that you're inputting into them, the better they get at identifying. So both of those apps I use all the time. Really big fan of. This is one of my favorite websites. It's called the Global Oneness Project. And I don't think I'm hooked up to you. Let me just figure out I am. Yeah. This is a site that has really, really thoughtful, artistic, scientifically accurate, culturally appropriate stories about the world, about nature, about climate, about water use, about farming. a lot of the stories are about how indigenous peoples are reacting and are being affected by, by climate change or just the Western world in general. I really, really recommend kind of looking at this. If you're looking for short documentaries, which is kind of why I use this a lot in my classes, because like the stories might be 15 to, 40 minutes long. There's a lot of picture essays. There's just a lot of really good stuff on here. And it's just really, really well done. The Global Oneness Project. Some field trips and nature walks. So, like, I grew up in New Jersey, but I grew up closer to Philadelphia. I really didn't go into the Pine Barrens very often. Sometimes, but not often. We're normally in other places. But where we are now, like, the Pine Barrens are amazing. Like, take your kids, take your grandkids to Wharton State Park. Wharton is amazing. There's just so much there. And it's normally just something we drive through to get to the shore. We're like, oh, let's go to LBI. So we'll drive through this amazing place that is unique. Like, unique ecosystem that I think we take for granted. So like going to Wharton, the Pinelands Alliance, I don't know if you've ever heard of the Pinelands Alliance, the Pinelands Commission, big fan. They do great things. They have good programming. Again, getting the kids to these things. They always have like really nice things. They have canoe adventures out, in the Batstow and things like that. The wildlife refuges, I'm a big fan. Forsyth is awesome. Capital City Farm, so I'm a big fan of urban farms. I think they're really cool and really effective. So Capital City Farm is a farm that I've taken my students to many times. It's in Trenton, and it's a farm, an urban farm that's built on top of an old railroad depot, and now it's an urban farm where all the food is free. They grow it and they give it away to those who need it, because it is essentially a food desert where it's located. So, whatever they're growing is going out. There's a couple in Philadelphia as well. One that I like a lot called Farmer John. It's this really cool woman who just decided that the area needed a farm, and she built it. You should check her out. She's really amazing. The last one is the Friends of Wissahickon Park. I don't know if you've ever been to Wissahickon Park. Love Wissahickon. Yes.
I have small kids, and at this age, everything is a struggle. But I'm wondering if you have any concrete tips for getting them out in this area. Like, do you make it like a weekly thing? Like, we're going to do something weekly, or like every day you're going outside, rain or shine. Or, what works for you and your family, or what have you seen work for other people? Because I have to be honest, fitting anything in, including like something as important as outdoor time, can be a real challenge.
When my kids were little, I really did take them someplace every week. Like I said, I live closer to the city, so we went to Wissahickon Park all the time. Like once, I don't know, maybe like 3 times. We were there all the time. But even just a local park, the park right over here, that's a park. Just walking right over, along the water, just getting a kid by a water source where they can throw rocks. I know that doesn't sound like a thing, but taking your kids to the side of the water where there are rocks that they can just throw in the water and turn things over and see what's underneath the log. That's it. You don't need to take them to Tanzania, right? Take them to where they can kick some stones. And when I was little, I remember this. My dad used to take us to the Delaware River. I lived right along the river, and he wasn't some environmentalist or anything. He just liked taking his kids on walks to the river, and we would play along the river turn over rocks, find little eels, find like little fish and things. And that is probably, if not the main reason why I am doing what I am today. It's a huge reason as to why I am. Simply my father taking me on walks to the Delaware River in Palmyra, New Jersey, and Riverton, New Jersey, to throw rocks and to find little creepy crawlers. Like, that's it. So, yeah, I mean, you can do it. Like right over there. I don't know where you live, but
Right here.
Auntie, you're right near Bedford Leeds. There's trails all through there. That's what I used to take the kids there.
Yeah,
That counts.
Pennsauken
That
Home
counts.
Nature Center.
oh,
is a
the
great
Palmyra
place.
Nature Cove Center, yeah.
Yeah.
I used to go back there before it existed. It was different, but like it was like that's yeah. Sometimes that's all it takes. Like, let's go take a walk, through the graveyard there, and like look at the names of those who have passed. Like, again, like just getting this little bit outside, and like little kids just want to go run around and be goofy and do things. Knocking well, you're really not supposed to go knocking. We do all the time. So again, this is another picture of the climate march. The kids are really into it. So again, getting these kids, empowering them to become these informed citizens. I think I've said a lot of this already, but look at the problems and say, all right, well, this is a problem. How do we solve it? Like, they don't even have to come up with a correct way to solve it, but just to think about it as something that is solvable. Like, if we're like, this is a problem, like our 30-year-old friends, if the kids are coming at it like this can't be solved, it won't be solved. If we're like, it can be solved, we just haven't solved it yet, well, now there's a challenge. There's a career for them later on in life. Like, there's a mission.
And there's a lot of people who are solving it. There's a lot of good news.
Yes, there is. Like, there's some really cool stuff out there, and you just have to like dig a little bit deeper to find it. Like, you just have to, instead of being like all doom and gloom, like, all right, well, here are some folks who are doing some really cool stuff, and you can do it. Support the kids. Like, support them if they want to go protest something. Let them protest. Like, drive them. Like, recommend it. Like, say they can do it. Like, they believe in things. Accept what they're believing and encourage it. Encourage actions. Like, encourage action. Like, again, talk is cheap. Like, I'm talking now. What am I doing? Like we want to do things, right? And this is something that we all can do. We can connect them. Like, they're kids. They don't always know how to get to that spot. They have the ideas, they have the desire, but they don't know who to go talk to. They don't know the organization. They don't know that. And that's kind of where we all can kind of provide that bridge to them to get to that spot that they can, make that connection. And then let them go. Like, once they make that connection, more often than not, like from my kids, I can make these, not my own personal, well, sometimes, but like my students make the connection and I'll step back and just see what like happens. And often amazing things will happen. So yeah, and again, it doesn't have to be huge. It can be huge, but it can be small. It can be like, writing a letter to Andy Kim, be like, hey, we're going to, knock in on his office and like saying, hey, Andy, what's up? I want to do something about climate change. Yeah, he's a friendly fellow.
Hey, Bob.
Yes.
Marty has a resource here, speaking of things you could share, and he's going to have to leave soon. Is it all right if he
Sure.
just mentions that?
Yeah, so this is a book that a friend of mine wrote. It's called Green Actioneers, and it's a family action guide. And if you have folks who would be interested in this, the author, his name is Dave Finnegan, has offered to make it available for free online if you want to download it. But if you want to buy a copy, his new edition will be out shortly. So this is a pre-publication copy that they have. So, but it has hundreds of ideas and all kinds of little places where kids can crayon and in the pictures and all. And designed for families with young kids, from basically elementary school up through middle school, basically. So, yeah.
Awesome.
And I'll leave some of my
I put a
business
couple
cards
of-
on the.
Okay, and there are also a couple of pictures of this book back with the other resources. I didn't have the book, but I had a picture of the cover, so you can take that if you're interested.
And if you go to his basic website, it's Green Actioneers. So it's like auctioneers without the U, at greenactioneers.com. And you can get the information there. Thank you.
Yeah, do you know anybody who repairs solar panels for less than $400?
I do have a friend who works in solar, so I can give you his name. But less than $400, I wouldn't hold your breath. All right, so I mean that's what I have. This is my son. This is we're on top of Mount Monroe in New Hampshire. So again, just getting the kids outside. So if anybody has any other questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them. Yes.
I had a question that comes from the handout.
Oh, okay.
Why is New Jersey warming faster in the past 20 years than any other state?
Why is what?
Why is New Jersey warming faster in the past 20 years than any other state?
I don't know if that's accurate.
I
is.
think isn't there one state that's warming faster, like
I would think
Alaska?
I would
Oh,
think
we're in now?
Alaska.
It was,
Yeah.
we were third a couple of years ago.
Warming more than Alaska. I
Has to do with
can't
the
answer.
ocean temperatures, maybe?
I mean, where the Gulf Stream is, where I don't know. I don't have an answer to that. That was first I've heard that one. I would have said definitely Alaska, but interesting. Yes.
I think you mentioned stories, and I think that's really important because if you want people to believe that something's possible, just show them who else is doing it. And I just want to mention one book back there is called Old Enough to Save the Planet, and it's for young children, but it tells the story of children all around the world and different things that they've done, everything from getting plastic out of the waterways to recycling to planting a native garden.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you're looking for something for younger children, you might be interested in that.
And often you'll find like the most amazing things in the developing world, like where kids are, where they have to make changes. Like there's a book out, and it's a documentary. It's based in Kenya. A little boy makes a windmill. I can't remember the name. I've seen the movie, but he basically makes a windmill to power a cell phone charger station. I'm pretty sure that's the story. But he made it. Like, he came up with this. Like, that's not something like our kids would do, because I mean, there's probably 50 sockets in like right in this room. So a lot of times you'll see like these amazing stories from again another part of the world where you're like, oh well, you know, they're poor and they're uneducated, and that's garbage, because like those kids are not like they are the most innovative and doing some of the most amazing things, where our kids they just don't have to, right? They just don't have to.
I wanted to share one other resource that I think might be helpful for people. I just learned about it yesterday. It's called Onora, O-N-O-R-A, and the website is onoraglobal.com, and it's a place where people connect who are interested in these kinds of issues, and they actually have a survey that you can take that will help you identify areas in your own life where you can make a difference in terms of your carbon footprint. So it's like a survey that you take, and it asks about your travel activities, it asks about your eating activities, it asks about your recycling activities, and a whole series of different, how big your house is. It's quite detailed, and it will show you how your results compare to the average person in the United States and even in other countries. So quite a challenge.
Take that survey with your kids or your grandkids,
Of course.
you know, then they get to answer too, and it's
Right.
it makes more of an impact.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like I do food waste stuff, and
Yeah.
you know, if you do a food waste audit with your kids, it might really make an impression on them and just all the things that they throw away.
You can keep all of your trash like this is a crazy one, but you keep like all of your bags of trash for like maybe an entire week, and like you kind of put it all out. It's gross, but I've seen it before. I don't recommend
That's
it.
one of the questions. How many bags do you put out a week?
All right.
I had a quick question if you have time. It's maybe not so much now since you're at George School, and I would imagine a lot of the kids there would be more aligned with this, but I was wondering if you had any, back when you used to teach kids that maybe they're getting an influence from the kind of the other side of the aisle, we'll say. Do you have any like advice for talking about kids like that? Because I think like if you say like climate change itself, they might say that as some sort of thing, but like a lot of these things like doing a park cleanup or planting a garden, I would think that would kind of go across the aisle kind of.
Yeah, I mean that's a really good point. I certainly have taught at places where not everybody was on the same page, like at George School. And the way that I would always go about it is teaching the science, showing the numbers, showing the data. And when you start there, it's hard to, like, if you don't politicize it, it's hard to argue. And kids, like, they're not as jaded necessarily as the parents, right? The parents are kind of into their political beliefs, and they don't want to believe in what they don't want to believe in. Kids are more willing to be accepting of evidence. And you're like, all right, well, we're not even talking about climate change. I'm just talking about climate and how climate works. And here's the data, and we can look at this, and without even like bringing up climate change or these politically charged terms. At the end of the lesson or at the end of the year, it kind of comes together. So like, I really think providing evidence, like unbiased evidence, when like I'm not an environmentalist when I'm teaching. I am an environmental science teacher providing, facts and figures and data and observable, change. So that's how I've been most successful. I've had very little, if any, pushback coming at it like that. And that goes for any controversial, not that I think science is controversial, like topic like evolution or something like that. And like, it's all just, here's the data and here's the facts. And then the kids are like, oh, okay, that makes sense. So, thank you. All right, well, that is all I have. I hope everybody's still awake, so that's good, I think. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.